This video is created by Jagrat Creation. It is on redemption of debentures. I wish to solve one sum wherein own debentures are purchased, and I want to explain the journal entries that are recorded with different alternatives and with reference to purpose. Observe the sum on the screen. This is a very small sum, objective style question. Axel Limited purchased its own 12% debentures of face value 100 each. Interest is payable on 30th September and 31st of March as sinking fund investment as shown below. So these are the sinking fund investments are purchased. And in that sinking fund investment, own debentures are purchased. On 1st of August 2016, 6 lakhs 94x interest. 31st of December 2016, 4 lakhs 95 cum interest. Total amount of debenture outstanding on 1st of April 2016, 100 lakhs. Calculate the amount to be credited to sinking fund during the year ended on 31st of March 2017 by way of interest resulting from the above mentioned transaction. So these are the two purchases. That is an investment of sinking fund, and investment is made in own debentures. On this investment of sinking fund in form of own debentures, on that how much interest is going to be received by the end of the year, and that is going to be credited to sinking fund account. That is the first question. Give journal entries for the transaction. I am also going to explain the journal entry for these two transactions. Just observe. I want to find out the interest on own debentures credited to sinking fund, because these are the sinking fund investment. The first 6 lakhs own debentures are purchased on 1st of August, and they are held by the company till the end of the accounting period 31st of March, that is 31st of March 2017. How many months are there from August to 31st of March? So 1st of August, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, 8 months interest. So on this 6 lakhs, 8 months interest is going to be received. After purchase of own debenture, 8 months interest is going to be considered, and that will be transferred to sinking fund. The another purchase is on 31st of December. So number of months from 31st of December 2016 to 31st of March 2017 are 3 months. So on this 4 lakhs, 3 months interest is going to be received. So total amount of interest that is going to be credited to sinking fund account can be worked out. Here for first purchases you are required to calculate 8 months interest, and for the second purchases you are required to calculate 3 months interest. And that too at the rate of what percentage? 12%, because it is an investment in own debentures. So this is a very simple question you can answer. 6 lakhs into 12% into 8 by 12 plus 4 lakhs into 12% into 3 by 12. So total amount of interest on debenture, interest on investment in own debenture by way of sinking fund will be credited to sinking fund account 60,000. This is a very simple answer to the first question. Now I want to give you the answer to this question in an alternative way, because interest is payable on 30th September and 31st of March. So how much amount will be credited to sinking fund account on the interest date on 30th September? How much amount is going to be credited to sinking fund by which has been considered as interest on investment in own debentures? And similarly, I want to find out the amount to be credited to sinking fund on 31st of March. This is the amount, total amount during the year that ends on 31st of March 2017 that gets credited to sinking fund. But I want to get the same answer, 60,000, as by way of bifurcation between the interest rates. Just observe. Interest payable on 30th September and 31st of March on 6 lakhs. On 6 lakhs. The first interest is 30th September. On that, 6 months interest is paid. So 6 months interest works out to be 36,000. Out of that, you have purchased the investment on 1st of August. And when you purchase the investment, you are required to pay interest. Interest for which period? from last date of interest till the date of purchase. Last date of interest was 31st of March and it is purchased on 1st of August. So 31st of March to 1st of August, that period interest is to be paid at the time of purchase. So that much interest is already paid. So interest paid from 31st of March to 1st of August, and that interest paid will be deducted from total interest of 36,000. So 6 lakhs into 12% into 4 months, 31st of March to 1st of August. So April, May, June, July, 4 months, and 4 months interest is 24,000. So interest on own debenture to be credited to sinking fund account as on 30th September 2016 will be 12,000. Now same way, I want to find out the interest to be credited to sinking fund account on 31st of March. For that, 6 lakhs plus 4 lakhs, 10 lakhs. On 10 lakhs, 6 months interest at the rate of 12% works out to be 60,000. On 31st of December, 4 lakhs investment in own debenture is being made. And when you purchase the investment, you are required to pay interest till the date of purchase, starting from last date of interest. So last date of interest here was 30th September. So 30th September to 31st of December, interest on 4 lakhs is being paid. So 30th September to 31st of December, 4 months interest on 4 lakhs is paid. So 60,000 minus 12,000, 48,000 is the interest on own debenture that could be credited to sinking fund account as on 31st of March 2017. And the total amount by the end of the year to be credited to sinking fund, 12,000 plus 48,000, that works out to be 60,000. So this 60,000 and this 60,000 agrees. This is the annual amount calculated. Here I have calculated the annual amount to be credited to sinking fund, which has been considered as an interest on investment in own debentures. And here also the 60,000 is the answer considered. But here on the first interest date, 12,000 will be credited to sinking fund, and on second interest date, 48,000 is going to be credited to sinking fund. This is how the same calculation is explained to you. Here the annual figure, here the bifurcated amount as per the interest date. Now I want to record the journal entry for this transaction. I am going to record the journal entry for these two transactions with two different alternatives. Just observe. Now next question, give journal entries for the transaction. Now first option. This is the details of the sum. On 1st of August, investment in own debenture made 6 lakhs. This is the working that I have already explained to you. Now on 1st of August, 6 lakhs into 94% is the ex-interest purchase price. That works out to be 5,64,000. This is the ex-interest price, means cost of purchase of investment. When you purchase, you are required to pay interest. For which period? From last date of interest till the date of transaction, that we have already worked out, 24,000. So total amount paid at the time of purchase is 5,88,000. What is the journal entry for this? So journal entry, own debenture investment account or own debenture account debit 5,64,000. Ex interest price is to be debited. Now this interest paid 24,000. Now in this first alternative, the interest paid 24,000 at the time of purchase of own debenture is debited to debenture interest account. So debenture interest account debit 24,000 to bank account credit. Now you are required to pay debenture interest on the interest date. Here debenture interest paid at the time of purchase of own debenture. So at the time of purchase of own debenture, the debenture interest is paid for only 4 months. So 4 months debenture interest has been paid on 6 lakhs and that has been debited to debenture interest account. Now on the interest date, I am required to debit debenture interest account with the total amount other than this 24,000. Notice it. So on total debentures are 100 lakhs, 100 lakhs into 12% into 6%, 6 by 12. 6 lakhs is total interest. Out of that, already paid debenture interest for 4 months, 24,000 debenture interest is already paid and debited to debenture interest account, so I remove it. Now 4 months interest is already paid. 2 months interest is interest on own debenture, is receivable, is due by the company from itself. So due on 30th September interest for 2 months, 12,000, and this is the amount paid to outsiders. So debenture interest paid to outsider debenture interest account debit to bank account credit, and this 12,000 interest due, this 12,000 that is to be credited to sinking fund at the end. But here the debenture interest account debit to interest on own debenture account credit. So this is the interest on own debenture account credit 12,000 that will be transferred to sinking fund, either on the interest date or at the end of the year. Anyway, so this is how the entries are recorded. So what is the style? When I purchase the investment and I pay debenture interest, it is debited to debenture interest account. And debenture interest, which is due after the purchase period. So debenture interest is due. Investment in own debentures interest is due from the company itself. For that due, that amount is 12,000. That is to be recorded as an income to be credited to interest on own debenture, and that will be transferred to sinking fund. Now, this is the entry made on the interest date. Now, next purchase is 95% come interest, so you are required to remove the interest. 4 lakhs into 95% minus interest for 3 months, 12,000. So this is the X interest purchase price. X interest purchase price will be debited. Own debenture account debit. Now this 12,000 interest paid. Debenture interest account debit or interest on debentures account debit 12,000 to bank account credit 3,88,000. Now this is how the interest paid at the time of purchase of own debenture is debited to debenture interest account. That's an important point to be noticed in this alternative. Now on interest date, total interest payable is on 100 lakhs at the rate of 12% for 6 months. Out of that, you have already paid 12,000 at the time of purchase. Now due, 3 months interest is paid. Interest on own debentures purchased after 3 months from the last interest date. So interest was paid for 3 months, and for 3 months interest is due. So that is also 12,000. That is also 12,000. So on 4 lakhs, 3 months interest was paid, 3 months interest was due. And on 6 lakhs that was purchased on 1st of August, on that interest on own debenture is due for the all 6 months. So this is the total amount of interest on own debenture due, 12,000 plus 36,000, 12,000 is already paid. So if you deduct this 60,000, then you will find the amount payable to outsiders. So debenture interest account debit to bank account, and this is the interest due. This interest was already paid, that is debited to interest on debenture account. This interest on own debenture due on the interest date, for that debenture interest account debit, interest on debentures account debit to interest on own debentures account credit. This is how entries are recorded under the first option. In the second option, the entries could be recorded when you purchase the debentures. Instead of debiting interest on debentures account, debit interest on own debentures account. That is the second alternative. Now I want to record the journal entries for the same transaction by this second option. Now one more important point, though not questioned in this sum, I want to explain that debentures are purchased here as sinking fund investment. But suppose that debentures are purchased for immediate cancellation. In that situation, when you purchase the investment, debit interest on debentures account. After purchase of investment, if they are immediately cancelled, then no interest is payable for subsequent period. Here the interest is paid for 4 months, At the time of purchase of own debenture, 4 months interest was paid and it was debited to debenture interest account. And after purchase of investment, after purchase of own debentures, they are immediately cancelled. So next 2 months interest, that is interest on the next interest, that is next 2 months interest, is not payable because the debentures are cancelled. In that situation, this first entry will be there. The second entry for debenture interest also will be there. But the third entry wouldn't be there because the debentures purchased are cancelled on the date of purchase, that is on 1st of August. So remember one important point. If the debentures, own debentures are purchased for immediate cancellation, you should write the entries in this fashion. But remember, don't write the entry for debenture interest due because debentures purchased are immediately cancelled. That's an important point. But in this sum, debentures are purchased as sinking fund investment, so interest gets due after the for a period after the purchase till the date of interest, and for that you are required to write the entry for interest due. These are the entries for interest due on interest date, and that is transferred to interest on own debentures account. So this is how the first alternative is explained. Now second alternative. Now in this second alternative, I want to write down the journal entries over here. 6 lakhs into 94%. I have already made working for this. 6 lakhs into 90%, 5,64,000 is the ex interest purchase price, interest paid at the time of purchase. So here, own debenture account debit 5,64,000, that is same in this alternative and it was same in the previous alternative. This 24,000 was debited to interest on debentures account. Now I don't debit interest on debentures account, I debit interest on own debentures account debit. Interest on own debentures account debit to bank account. This is how the first entry is recorded. The change is made. Instead of debiting interest on debentures account, here I have debited interest on own debentures account. Now on the interest, this is how the interest is paid. Total amount of interest to be paid to outsider is 5,64,000. 6 lakhs is the total debenture interest. Now in this second alternative, the total debenture interest 6 lakhs will be debited because at the time of purchase I have not debited debenture interest account. At the time of purchase I have debited interest on own debentures account. That's an important point. So total interest 6 lakhs will be debited to debenture interest account. So debenture interest account debit 6 lakhs. Amount payable to outsiders, bank account credited, and interest on own debenture 24,000 plus 12,000, that is credited to interest on own debentures account. So what is the situation? Interest on own debenture account debit 24,000, interest on own debenture account credit 36,000. So net amount that gets credited to interest on own debenture account 12,000, that is transferred to sinking fund. This is how the entries are recorded under the second option. Once again, notice, this is another purchase. I have already demonstrated this working to you. This is the ex interest purchase price. So own debenture account debit 3,68,000. Now this 12,000 interest paid, that I don't debit to interest on debentures account. I debit that to interest on own debentures account debit. So interest on own debentures account debit 12,000 to bank account credit. Now on the interest date, I will debit debenture interest account with the full amount 6 lakhs because at the time of purchase of investment, I have not debited debenture interest account. I have debited interest on own debentures account. So 6 lakhs will be debited and the amount payable to the outsiders will be credited to bank account, and this amount paid and due will be credited to interest on own debentures account. So interest on debentures account debit to bank account to interest on own debentures account credit. So this is the second option with the journal entries could be recorded. Now I want to compare both here before you. So these are the two alternatives with which I have recorded the entry. This is the first style, this is the second style. Notice first 6 months, amount debited to debenture interest account 24,000, 5,64,000 and 12,000. This 24,000 paid at the time of purchase, 5,64,000 paid to outsiders, 12,000 interest on own debenture recoverable from the company itself on the interest rate 12,000. So total amount debited to interest on debentures account will be worked out to 6 lakhs. and it is same as 6 lakhs over here. This 6 lakhs and 6 lakhs, so total amount debited to debenture interest account under both the system is 6 lakhs. Notice it. It is same. Notice it. Now same way, in the second half year, amount debited to debenture interest account 12,000, paid at the time of purchase of investment. This is paid to outsiders. This is the interest on own debenture, recoverable from the company itself. So total amount debited to debenture interest account 6 lakhs, and in the second alternative also this is 6 lakhs. So amount totally debited to debenture interest account is same under both the alternatives. That's an important point I wanted to emphasize. Now next, interest on debentures account, debit to interest on own debentures account. So own debenture interest account is to be credited with 12,000. Here also 12,000 is credited, but it is by way of difference. Total debit 24,000, interest on own debenture, 36. So 24 minus 36, 12,000. So same 12,000 is credited to interest on own debentures account, which is transferred to sinking fund account at the end of the year. In next second half of the year, 48,000 is credited to interest on own debentures account. Here also 12,000 and 60,000. 12,000 debit, 60,000 credit. So 48,000 is a net amount. So amount credited to interest on own debenture account is also 48,000. This is how I wanted to explain the alternative ways of writing the journal entry for purchase of sinking fund investment in the form of own debentures. So this is the first alternative, this is the second alternative. The reason for selecting this sum, that student finds sometime journal entries in this by this method. Sometimes they find the journal entries in this form. They should be very clear that both the methods come to the same conclusion. To explain this concept clearly, I have selected this sum and explained to you. Once again, when the own debentures are purchased for immediate cancellation, don't record entries in this fashion. It is advised. Of course, you can record, and at the end of the day, you can make the things quite clear with the help of conceptual clarity. But I advise you to write the entries in this fashion, because in this fashion, on the date of purchase, the interest is paid is debited to interest on debentures account, and no entry is to be recorded at the time of on the interest date when the interest becomes receivable from the company itself on investment in own debentures. So you can enter this third entry, and this last entry you can avoid if the debentures are purchased for immediate cancellation. And when the debentures are purchased for immediate cancellation, instead of debiting own debentures account, I advise you to debit debenture redemption account. So if the debentures are purchased for immediate cancellation, instead of debiting own debenture account, debit debenture redemption account, and the interest paid at the time of purchase should be debited to interest on debentures account, and at the same time, no entry is to be recorded on interest date for the interest on own debenture, because they are cancelled on the date of purchase. So this is how I have tried to explain you this sum. I feel that you have followed all these things. Thanks to all.